No, we're good. I did, but I made a decision because we're late.
Cool.
So, we should be going live now. Hopefully I didn't forget anything crucial. Like, actually, audio. Is audio good? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Alright, it seems like the audio's good. Guys in the chat, let me know if you can hear and see us and everything is working. Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart. I am joined by my good friend Brandon from WhataboutNodnarb. His channel should be linked in the description below. We're going to be talking about Nintendo, because that's what we do every Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Almost every Sunday night, because there's exceptions. We take breaks. But, like what, like 4 breaks a year? Not many.
We're people too.
No, I'm not a person. I am...
Robots.
I'm
not
a robot either. I'm something else. Not sure what it is yet, though. Yeah. So anyway, the basic plan for tonight is to discuss whatever you guys have in the chat to bring up for sure. But we're going to be focusing on Metroid Dread because the game is coming out on Friday. And today is Sunday. We are less than 6 days away. It's like 5 days away. Kinda, almost. Yeah, I mean, if you count midnight, like, we're really close. We're just a handful of days away, less than a week away from the release of Metroid Dread. This time next week, we will have played Metroid Dread, and there will certainly be some impressions that will be discussed next Sunday for sure. But this is the last time that we're going to talk about Metroid Dread without actually having our hands on it, having played it. So we're going into that, speculating, overhyping it, all that good jazz. Wait, can you overhype this game? This is going to be the game of the year.
I don't know.
Maybe. But there goes that maybe overhyping, right? Yeah, maybe. So we're going to talk about Metroid Dread. But we're also going to be talking about this series of events that has occurred over the last week regarding Nintendo and Bloomberg. I'll sum it up right now, but we'll go into more detail later. Basically, Bloomberg put out another report suggesting some sort of Switch Pro on the horizon. And the basic point of the article they put out was that they had 11 developers that had 4K development kits for Nintendo Switch, implying a 4K capable Nintendo Switch is on the horizon. Nintendo, shortly afterwards, denied such report and claims and said that it was not true. And they wanted to make that very clear to their investors and customers, us. But then, if I remember that company correctly, one of those said 11 developers, Zigna, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, they're working on like this Star Wars game thing. Anyway, yeah, Star Wars Hunters. They came out and said that yes, the report is false. They do not have such 4K development kits. That's just not true. Of course, people are speculating that they're lying, but that's what they said. And what makes things more interesting is that on the same day, September 30th, a patent went public that was about Nintendo doing research and development for AI upscaling, which is basically another way of saying DLSS, which is the whole point of Switch Pro. It's a system, it's basically a technology that allows for resolutions through AI to be increased to a much greater resolution with minimal processing power. And this is the kind of technology that would make Switch Pro work. And Nintendo has a patent specifically for this. So it's a very, very interesting situation, and we're going to be diving into that later tonight. What were you going to say, Brandon?
No, I was just saying, it's super interesting. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that. We got a few more details about the Metroid Prime remake as well. I didn't
actually hear about this.
Basically, a few people have come out and clarified that this project has been in the works for a few years already. Further implying that it's less of a basic remaster like a Skyward Sword HD, which just takes a few months, and more like a remake, even though people are afraid to use that term, remake, because there's probably still going to be some artifacts, some elements from the initial game. So we're talking about that as well. It's not in the title or the description, but hey, it's Metroid related, so we'll be discussing that. That's interesting stuff right there. And that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on tonight. But of course, if you guys want to ask me anything about Zelda or Mario or Kirby or Bayonetta or anything Nintendo, we will gladly dive into that as well. I see I got a super chat here from Taker610. Thank you very much, Taker. I think this may be a typo. I think you're trying to say Furukawa, which is the president of Nintendo. We're always working on new hardware and also have no plans for new hardware. Hey, here's a new hardware we definitely weren't working on. Yeah, it's kind of funny, right? It seems like that sometimes. It's Nintendo can't lie to their investors, but at the same time, they are obviously working on new technology. They always are. So it's kind of a tough situation in terms of what's going on there, but that's part of this discussion. That's part of what we're going to be sort of diving into later. But let me kind of check into the chat here, see what you guys have to say hello, and then we'll jump into the swing of things. Birdman, you were first. Yes, you were. DE Fox, hello there. Super Chris, hello. My mods are here. Thank you guys. Thank you for being here. Yes, DE Fox, footage of Metroid Dread has leaked onto the internet. I am not going to discuss any leaks for Metroid Dread. So if you're here expecting leaks, I'm sorry. If it hasn't been officially discussed by Nintendo, I will not be discussing it here, unless it's my own personal speculation that is not been skewed by any leaks I have seen, which, by the way, I have not seen any. I've entirely ignored it because I do not want to see anything that Nintendo is not willing to advertise. Yeah. Now, Nintendo has advertised a lot, so, you know, there is that to consider there. But
I'm hesitant to even look at the stuff Nintendo's advertised.
Right, I actually have not seen the last two Dread reports.
I haven't seen any of them.
No.
Purposely, I've not seen a single one.
Yeah. We could look into it, but I have a general understanding of what they showed off. They showed off environments and things like that. We don't have to dive specifically into that, but we're gonna be talking about Metroid Dread. Yeah, some people may already have access to Metroid Dread. That makes sense. People are already reviewing the game.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah.
The Shank Kelkar, hello there. You'll be in and out of this. That's okay. Rescue Squad Culp, hello. J.R.R. Tolkien, what is up? If AR, I'm suing me, doesn't straight up call either Nintendo or Bloomberg a liar tonight, I'll be sorely disappointed.
Oh.
Ooh.
He wants the drama.
You want the drama. I tend to go middle ground a lot, but you know, I do think there's some shenanigans here. So I don't think this is all straight. I think there's some shenanigans here. But we'll dive into that. You may not be sorely disappointed by the end of the discussion. Although I'm not going to confirm or deny that. Birdman, of course they're not going to say that they're building crafting a new Switch system with 4K capabilities because the OLED is arriving this Friday and they want that to sell. Yeah, but they can't lie either.
True.
IzzyXD 1019 Andres Restart on SNL when? Saturday Night Live? You know, I wouldn't be opposed to that someday, maybe. That could be fun. A one-time thing. I could do it. Will anyone else do it though? Will anyone else let me do it? I don't know. But I'd be down. Yeah, I'd be down. Paul Dune, the audio is good. Thank you for letting me know. Hello there, Ronnie Fazio. Who else but Zane? Decantastic audio. I don't. Decentastic. I see. Decent. It is decent. Good. Onyx Plays. Hey, hello there. The Sean Kirk. Thoughts on Sora for Smash? I heard about that to some extent. I really looked very deeply into that Sora rumor. I heard it was debunked though. So you know, that's kind of it. I didn't really look further deeper into that. You know,
At this
I'm
point, I mean, it's 2 days away. We'll know it then. Like, I don't
I'm
know.
strongly debating having like a Smash hype stream tomorrow night. Just kind of like diving into that stuff. Maybe I'll look into a few more things.
Play some Smash on stream, maybe.
I don't know if I'll play Smash on stream because I
Why
suck.
not?
Because I suck.
You can play with viewers.
I also don't have a 60 FPS capture card, so there's that.
It's not necessary.
I have a 30 FPS capture card, so we'll see. We'll cross that bridge tomorrow. We'll see. But in terms of like Smash, like I mean it's gonna be a 40-minute presentation. There is some hype here. Yeah. I am surprised. I am surprised that they're handling it in this way a little bit, just because it's a little bit out of the norm. And it is sort of letting credence to the idea that they're going to try to go out with a bang. But I also feel like, no. Like, like it's going to be a character that some people will like. It'll be a character that some other people will be okay with. And it'll also be a character that some people will hate. Like, that's what I think is going to go, how it's going to go down.
Oh, I totally agree. I also think that the 40-minute time is going to throw people off. They're going to be like, oh, it's 40 minutes? They're going to have time to show a character and other things too, and all this other stuff, and I don't think that's the case. I'm pretty sure they're just going to show the character for like 30 minutes straight. And then show the other stuff for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, like there'll be some Mii costumes. Now, it's interesting because there could be like a final Smash update. Like maybe he announces one interesting little thing that they're adding to Smash, like right at the end. And he'll probably have a moment where he'll have his final words for Smash Ultimate. Like there'll be a little moment there. But that moment may only last like 15 to 30 seconds. Like it may not be anything big. It'll be like, it's been great working with this. This is a mission that, you know, I set out to do from my dear departed friend Iwata-san. Like that may be mentioned, but I don't expect that to be like a big long monologue, just a few moments. So you know, we'll see. It's Tuesday. It's coming. J.R.R. Tolkien. Nah, the Age of Calamity DLC will be Game of the Year. That will throw me for a loop. Yeah. Has DLC ever been Game of the Year for anything?
I don't think that it can. It's not. The only DLC that can be Game of the Year is Torna.
Torna is like if it's big enough to get its own physical release, like something like maybe Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, you know, is a kind of like something that's like pitched as a massive expansion. Like maybe that could get a nomination for something besides just best DLC.
I think if it can be sold on its own, then it can be a Game of the Year candidate.
Okay. Who else would say in Breath of the Wild 2 ideas? I think it would be cool if the different races had different subcultures. Like, what if the Rito had a separate faction that lived in Gerudo Desert and had their own culture? That would be interesting. You know, there are different types of Zora throughout the Zelda lore. So you have that, and you know, thinking of Gorons, like we have noticed there are some Gorons that like to travel around, and there may be others that are more stay there. But maybe there are more Gorons that like to, you know, go deeper into the mountain, right, deeper into lava and stuff. And where there are some Gorons that are like, we like to wrestle, we're the wrestling tribe, because like there were wrestling Gorons in Twilight Princess, so. It's a really good idea, actually. I would love to see them go in that direction, and then continuing on that train of thought, like the Gerudo, right? Like there were pirate Gerudo in Majora's Mask, but then you had the Gerudo thieves that were thieves, and then you have the Gerudo that are very civil in Breath of the Wild. Like, what if they did kind of tie that in? Now you could argue that they're just simply different timelines or realms, but you know, there is actual material out there that they could pull from to express this idea you're suggesting here. Like
there's the I think the River Zora or the Zora that are bad, right? Yeah.
The River Zora are bad. Those. Yep. I mean, then there's in Wind Waker, it suggested that the Zora evolve into the Rito, yet we have Rito and Zoras. So there's
You know, it would
certainly
make
some
sense
weird
to
potential.
add River Zora if they have like underwater exploration, because those would be like your enemies.
Yeah, and maybe they could tie into it could tie into the plot or like a subplot for like different side quests. Like, what if as you explore more of the underwater realm, there's like this subplot of like the Zora you already know, and then the River Zora, and they're kind of like feuding, and that there's a story there. Like that would be interesting.
That'd be
right?
awesome.
Yeah. Or what if like they expand the map like just straight up outwards to the point where you can access more of the ocean, and that connects to the Gerudo Desert. So maybe they do bring in some of those Gerudo pirates, and then they're feuding with the Gerudo we know from Breath of the Wild. So there's certainly I think a lot of potential with this idea. It'd be a great way to kind of expand upon like a lot of like side quests and stuff, like make that like almost maybe more exciting for a lot of people. Like, for example, in Elder Scrolls, like a lot of people don't even bother the main campaign. They just thrive off living in the environment and leveling up and playing the different side quests. Like that can get very exciting for people. So imagine if Breath of the Wild 2, I'm not saying it has to have as many side quests as Elder Scrolls, but if they were to significantly expand on that and make them like interesting stories with quirky characters, with interesting events like that, that would add a lot. Like Majora's Mask, right? But perhaps to an even greater degree because the game's it's much larger.
Right. I would like more events that happen in the world, like travelers just coming and getting attacked by something. But I would like it if it was like more unique, like cooler things could happen. Like they could, instead of just like a moblin could attack, maybe like a large creature could attack it, or like even a flying enemy could attack it. Like something cool, like a small like dragon even. That'd be epic. I want more and just cool like events happening. Like you're just on the road and all of a sudden you're ambushed by a dragon and it's attacking you, and you're like, oh shit, gotta save these people and myself.
I really like the idea of there being like not just bokoblins that you have to saving villagers from. Like that was a neat thing they added in Breath of the Wild. But to your point, like imagine having to save them from other overworld bosses. Like what if there's a camp that gets just randomly attacked by a Lionel, and it's just an event that can occur. You know, like imagine if the environments in Breath of the Wild 2 are destructible and you're passing by a stable and the people are just attacked by a Lionel. Like it's just one of those random things that can occur and you're just passing by and all of a sudden you have to do this. Like it's not a scripted thing. It's just something that's possible within the entire script and or animations or physics of the Breath of the Wild 2 world. Like that just can happen. That would be really cool. I mean, if they can tie in some sort of reward for that's more significant than just a typical Lionel, that would be pretty nice. Like, actually, like thinking more about that, like, what if they were to think of a way where the world is so dynamic that there are events like that feel like scripted side quests, but aren't. And there's things that can occur in the overworld, and they kind of create a system in place where there's a reward for helping out or interacting with these crazy events that can occur.
Right. That'd be awesome. Right?
Like there's tons and tons of potential the more and more we think about it. I got a couple super chats here to get to actually. So Taker610 provided another super chat. Thank you very much, Taker. Taker says, "Get Rule of 2 on next week for Dread impressions." I actually wanted to see if Rob could maybe come on sometime soon to talk about Metroid Dread. He's been a little bit busy lately, but at some point soon we are gonna try and do another show together for sure. Yeah, make sure to check out Rule of 2 Review. Great channel, great friend for sure. He's amazing for Metroid stuff, absolutely. So check it out. But yeah, sometime in the future, I'm sure we'll be doing something. Nick D. Honestly, I'm just bummed about the lack of official info on the potential new Donkey Kong game. Happy for Metroid fans, but bummed for myself. LOL. Firstly, thank you very much for the super chat, Nick. I appreciate it. But like on the note of Donkey Kong, we just gotta wait. We just gotta wait.
Yeah.
I know. We haven't got anything like new from Donkey Kong for hardcore gamers like us in a while. Like Tropical Freeze came out on the Switch in 2018, early 2018. But if you played it back on Wii U, there hasn't been anything new for years. 2013, 2014. I want to say 2014. I could be mistaken. Tropical Freeze. I think it's 2014, but let's find out right now. It's one of those two dates, like you said, Brandon. Early 2014. So yeah, it's close to that, but it's been a while since we got a new Donkey Kong game. I do think one's around the corner. We've touched on it before, but I mean, we just got the official confirmation of the Donkey Kong expansion to Super Nintendo World, and then just before that with the Nintendo Direct, we saw that there are going to be multiple Donkey Kong characters getting voice acting by some significant characters, by some significant actors such as Seth Rogen for the Mario movie coming out next year. I think those two things clearly demonstrate that Nintendo has a plan for Donkey Kong. I don't think you expand Super Nintendo World. I don't think you have the first expansion be a Donkey Kong expansion when it's such a dormant franchise, unless you have a bigger plan for that. The core of all of this, the core of the movies and the parks and the merchandising and all of that are the games. It all comes down to the games. So when you think about these things that we know about already publicly that are involved in the Donkey Kong franchise, I think it is highly suggestive that there is absolutely a plan for Donkey Kong. And when you go to the rumors that we've seen reported from different places that have a good track record of this inside information, the story holds up. The idea is that Nintendo wants to bring back Donkey Kong, but not just as a one-off, but to bring it back to a level of popularity similar to the way it was before the 21st century. Like they want Donkey Kong to come back strong. And when you think about this actually becomes related to Metroid. Because look at what's going on with Metroid right now. We are getting so much advertisement for Metroid Dread. So much. Did you see that commercial, Brandon, that came out this week for Metroid Dread? Involving the woman playing on the couch, and then there was an Emmy that went inside her apartment, and then she turned into Samus, and it was cool.
I think I did. I tried to not look every time I see new stuff in this game.
It was just like a quick 30-second trailer.
Eyes.
But it was cool. Like it was just like, oh, we're seeing like commercials again for Metroid, but now they're
I've definitely seen commercials come up for Metroid Dread.
Yeah. So there's lots of commercials. Nintendo's been pushing Metroid Dread hard with Switch OLED.
This game more than I've seen them push any game like almost ever.
Yeah, they are very much pushing Metroid. And then when you think about all the things we're hearing about Metroid Prime now, the remake for next year, for the 20th anniversary for Metroid Prime, it's very clear. It's very clear, assuming you believe the rumor, and I absolutely do, that Nintendo has I'm biased. There's a clear plan here. If we're talking about Donkey Kong and rumors, I feel like it's fair to talk about Metroid and rumors.
Yeah.
It's very clear Nintendo's a plan to bring back Metroid, but not just bring it back. We're like, oh, we got a game. Okay, cool. No, the plan is for Metroid to become something significant, something that Nintendo can rely on a fairly frequent basis. They want a franchise that they know when they come out with this, they're gonna get sales from it. And I think that is suggestive of other things for other IPs or series from Nintendo. So we see what's going on with Donkey Kong right now with the movie for Mario and the park as well. I think it's just Nintendo gearing up for a massive Donkey Kong revival the same way they're reviving Metroid. I think a few years from now, Nintendo wants to be in a position where, they come out with Mario, they come out with Zelda, they come out with Animal Crossing or Splatoon, they're guaranteed to sell, right? Or Pokemon. Like, those are all guaranteed to sell. But then they want to have, in that same conversation, Donkey Kong and Metroid as well. And who knows, maybe they'll push another franchise, F-Zero, please. Like, something. Like, they push something else to a greater height. And Xenoblade and Fire Emblem have actually increased a little bit, But they're certainly not as large as I think Nintendo wants them to be. Like Fire Emblem and Xenoblade, they kind of sell between 2 to 3 million, which is good. It's healthy. But I feel like for Donkey Kong and Metroid, Nintendo has an even larger sort of plan in mind for those. Like I think they expect those franchises to start selling 5+ million. That's just my thinking. I don't know what they actually expect, but that's based off what I think they could be doing consistently. I think those franchises could become like consistent 5+ million sellers. But we'll see what happens. Moving on the chat here. Chat jump. I do not know where I was. Birdman, do you want me to play Smash? We'll see. No guarantees, guys. I've shied away from just playing games on this channel on stream. I feel like that's not really a good fit for me. So we'll see. I really kind of like focusing on the conversation. So that's where, like, you know, like on this channel we have discussions, right? And we talk and speculate and analyze. If I start playing games, I feel like it takes a little bit too much away. Like it's kind of like a different thing. But we'll see what happens. There may or may not. Do not assume. I'll make an announcement tomorrow if I'm actually going to do it. Who else would say? I'd say make twice as many villages, 2 for each race. And this is in reference to Breath of the Wild too. Well, I want more villages. I want more races, and then maybe more subcultured races as well. Like more sub races. iSonic, hello there. Ronnie Fazio added me. I'm staying off Twitter until after the final Smash character is revealed. Also, I just need to get away. I've been watching Fates to stay busy. Fates, like Fate Stay Night, or is that another thing that I'm not sure of?
I have no idea what that is.
Fate Stay Night's a cool anime. Fate Stay Night is like, basically, there's like a few different ones, and they're like not like necessarily sequels, or almost like different tellings from different like parallel universes, or like a different direction the story could have gone. And basically the concept is there's a holy grail, and there are like 10, I think it's usually 10 special warriors that are taken from different times in history, and they come together to battle out for the holy grail. And they're like actual like real characters, well, usually real characters from history, like Gilgamesh or like yeah. So it's pretty darn cool. One of the main characters is Saber, which is a you know, Excalibur and King Arthur. She's like a different Excalibur the sword, but King Arthur. She's King Arthur, except she's not King Arthur. She's like a different idea of King Arthur. She's a woman who's like an incredible knight. Yeah.
And that's Saber.
Yeah. But that's if I remember correctly, that's kind of like what Fate Stay Night is on a very basic level.
Okay.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's cool.
Luigi's Therapist. What an exciting week for us fans. Although Smash Ultimate is coming to an end in terms of new content, I'm excited for the final character and an end of an era, right? It is an end of an era, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And it does kind of get me thinking, like, where does Nintendo go from here, right? Like, it seems like Nintendo sort of relied on Smash hype over the years, but I'll say that Fire's Pass Volume 2 has been far more spread out, and that need, it hasn't really felt like a need. Like, yes, there was a Smash announcement during the September Direct, but it was not significant. Like, it was like, okay, it's coming. Yet that Direct was still very well received. It has gotten some pretty good views and numbers. It's created a lot of discussion and excitement, and Smash was not the big deal there. The big deal for that Direct was Kirby and Bayonetta 3, which kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about how Nintendo seems like they're trying to branch out and expand some of their other franchises. So I actually have a lot of hope that this 3D Kirby game, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, is going to be a big deal. Like, it's going to be one of the most successful Kirby games yet. And the same for Bayonetta 3 as well. So like here you have these franchises that are coming out with exciting entries on the Nintendo Switch, and they both have huge potential to be the best selling in their respective series, which will then create a larger audience, and hopefully they can go back to those franchises and be even more successful with them. So I think Nintendo is actually playing their cards right here, and we're starting to see them tap into some of their lesser known franchises to some extent and push them to greater heights. So it's exciting stuff. But going back to the idea of Smash ending, Smash is kind of like a celebration of a lot of these franchises, right? So now what we're sort of seeing is Nintendo just talk about these other franchises that we love. Like the reason why Smash is such a big deal is because it sort of showcases a lot of our favorite characters. But now imagine a golden age where we just see a lot of these characters featured in their own games, and that's what we get excited about. So I'm not really too worried about like the future move, because Smash is always exciting, but there's going to be something else to be excited about. It's going to be Splatoon 3 or Xenoblade Chronicles 3 or the next Donkey Kong or Kid Icarus or F-Zero, who knows, a couple of years down the road. There's always going to be something. And eventually, I'm sure to some extent, Smash will return. Eventually it's going to happen. Nintendo's not going to just never do Smash again. It's one of their biggest, best franchises. So what would be crazy is if they move on to a Smash movie series, but that's a whole other thing that's probably years down the road if it even ever happens. But that would be nuts, right?
Amazing.
Yeah.
The Smash
cinematic universe, right?
Yeah, baby. That's what we need.
Yeah. Ronnie Fazio, Artoria Pendragon is her name and is originally a video game character, so she has a shot for Smash Bros. At some point. In relation to Saber from Fate Stay Night. Maybe. That'd be... I doubt it, because... Oh, I guess it is because there's a history of it being a game, right? Because it was adapted into an anime. Seems unlikely, but, you know, we'll see.
Possible. If it started out as a game, I guess it's possible.
Yeah. So we'll get back to the chat. You guys are bringing up a lot of interesting topics and ideas. So we'll try and get back to that a little bit later. But I do feel like we should probably actually talk about the topics, because then this would make the podcast clickbait. So bad clickbait. So let's talk about this Bloomberg situation.
Okay.
So, I feel like I actually summarized it relatively well earlier, but I'll just go over it again, perhaps slightly slower. So basically, Bloomberg put out the 11 developers that they heard had 4K development kits. Then Nintendo denied those claims. Let me see if I have the tweet still up. I do. So, I'll just read it out again. A news report on September 30th, 2021, JST falsely claims that Nintendo is supplying tools to drive game development for a Nintendo Switch with 4K support. To ensure correct understanding among our investors and customers, we want to clarify that this report is not true. We also want to restate that, as we announced in July, we have no plans for any new model other than Nintendo Switch OLED model, which will launch on October 8th, 2021. So, from here it's clear that Nintendo wants this to be clarified because they don't want to have the Switch OLED model sales to be impacted. Absolutely. Right. So people will argue that there's motive here to deny the claims from Bloomberg. I get what you're saying, but also I'm pretty sure it's illegal to lie to your investors. Like, you cannot lie to your investors. And I think people sort of like bunch up these situations where they see Nintendo say something to their investors versus times in the past when we've seen Nintendo executives say something and it turns out to not be true a little bit later down the road. Those are two different situations. It's one situation when a news site or person interviews or asks some sort of PR person a question, and that person doesn't necessarily have the answer, or if they do, they're not allowed to say it, and then they say something spur of the moment. It's another when you have something like this that was they took their time. This is a statement. This is a planned statement that was put together, not spur of the moment, and targeted towards their investors. Not just anyone, they're investors. There's a very different situation, right? Now, people will say, oh, Nintendo didn't say there'd be a revision this year, and they came out with one. Well, if you go back, they actually made sure to clarify that they had no plans to announce at this time, but they never did straight up denied that there wouldn't be a revision in 2021.
Never did.
As opposed to 2020, where they came out very early on and said, we have no plans for a revision this year. See, there's a very clear difference in the verbiage for 2020 versus 2021. So it's just a different situation.
Which of course we spoke about at the time.
Exactly. Yeah, because once they said that, then at that point at 2020, I was like, all right, there's no revision this year. It's because Nintendo said there wouldn't be. There you go. To their investors, to be clear. A PR guy's different. Like, we do sometimes hear things from different people, and we're like, oh, I guess that's not happening, and then a few weeks later, oh, look, it's happening. Like, it's different. Like, I remember when, I forget who it was. Was it David Wise? I think David Wise said that Banjo-Kazooie wasn't coming to Smash or whatever, and then, like, E3 happened 2 weeks later, and then Banjo-Kazooie was announced for Smash. Like,
Reggie said
that's
the DS
different.
Lite didn't exist, like, right before it got announced.
Sure, but Reggie was not speaking directly to the investors in that interview.
Right.
So that's the important distinction to be made here.
I do think maybe there's a degree of loopholes that maybe you could look into.
Sure.
That maybe Nintendo could use to get out of this. Because they never clarified exactly if every bit of it was false, or maybe they just said it wasn't true. Well, that doesn't mean that all of it is false. They never said exactly which part of it wasn't true. They did clarify the 4K part, but they never clarified anything else. So they could be sending development kits of some sort to 11 developers that maybe is going to be for 4K but doesn't have 4K at the moment. So technically, no, it's not a 4K. It's
not working.
It's just a future thing. Who knows what kind of loopholes that they
right. Well, like, for example,
I'm not saying that they will. I'm just saying that's another thing to think about.
Yeah. Here they say falsely claims that Nintendo is supplying tools to drive game support development for a Nintendo Switch with 4K support. To ensure correct understanding among our investors and customers, we want to clarify this report is not true. Basically, what they're saying is that, no, we are not supplying tools to drive game development for a Nintendo Switch with 4K support. I think that basically means that, assuming what they're saying here is absolutely 100% true, they are not preparing Nintendo Switch for 4K support. They're not doing that.
Right.
To your point.
That doesn't mean that there's not a Nintendo next generation device that they sent out. That's not a Switch, technically.
Yeah. And that brings us to the patent. We got a patent. I'm trying to find, like, the actual... I wanted to see an image. Because they're working on machine learning for AI upscaling, right? Yeah. There's a lot of text here. I'm just trying to find an image.
I kind of skimmed through the method that they're using a little bit. Because I think they sent out... I forget what it was. Some kind of paper or some kind of documentary. I forget exactly. Something that described how it worked. I'm not sure if you read it or not. I think I skimmed through it, but I don't remember everything.
Okay. I mean, there's images here. They're kind of like... I haven't analyzed them yet. And even if I did, I probably wouldn't know that much because this is not what I do. I realized my head sideways, but the image is sideways. Let's see if I can rotate it. Oh, yeah. There we go.
Did it pull up on the stream?
I'm trying to, but something... I think because I reset OBS, like, it's not picking... There we go. You guys should be able to see it now. So I think the basic concept here is here: render image, 540p image, prepare image, input data, reorganize, blah 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 blah. Now it's 1080p. Oh, like that's it, right? Like that's the basic gist. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon.
Yeah, I'm trying to read it. This is not the part I looked at, but I'm just looking at, and it's like very hard for me to read it. See, render image, 540p image, pair image, input data, reorganize the matrix, 16 by 16. Okay. Yeah. So basically, and this isn't. There's another document that actually explains, because this is very much like stuff where it assumes you already know how it works. Because like nobody knows what reorganize. I'm reorganizing to the matrix. Like that doesn't mean anything to anybody. So it basically works the same way as at least the original version of DLSS worked, DLSS 1.0, where a machine learning algorithm looks at a super high resolution, or at least comparatively to what you want to render, very high resolution version of the game, and it just has images, maybe even like 16K renders of the environments and everything, and it studies it, so it knows exactly what the game is supposed to look like at its absolute best. And then so it trains itself over time to know how the game looks, and then it looks at the original image and it fills in the blanks. It goes, okay, it's not no information here, okay, but I know what goes there, and it puts the information there, and then it renders it at a much higher resolution, which of course does cost performance to actually run the neural network and kind of like
it costs resources to do this.
Not nearly as much as the actual running at the actual higher resolution, of course.
Yeah, so so I'm just looking at this. I'm pretty sure there's an example of like how you could take an image and then it looks a little bit better. But wrong thing. So I think sometimes I hear people make the argument, but I want to care more about like performance. Like I'd rather they focus on that. But what you got to take into consideration here is that by using this technology, they can target lower resolutions, use this technique to improve it to a better resolution that would be acceptable for people, and because they're actually targeting a much lower resolution before they use the technique, they have a lot more sort of headroom with performance. Like that's kind of what it allows. It makes getting the job done a lot easier, so they can do a lot more with it. So it's like I don't know, like you look at games like Doom on Switch or Wolfenstein 2, and the resolution's very low. But what the games are doing, there's a lot going on in those games for a Switch game, and the way they get it to run is by having a dynamic but usually fairly low resolution. But with this machine learning, right? Well, we used to call it's not going to be DLSS for Nintendo, but whatever it is, right? This upscaling technique, what it's going to do is that they'll take a game like Doom on Switch, and then they'll target that low resolution so they can get this game running on Switch at a decent frame rate, doing a lot of the things you would expect from the other versions, just at a way lower frame rate. But then they'll have just enough headroom to use this AI upscaling, and then all of a sudden the game looks pretty darn good and is doing everything they would have wanted it to do at a good performance level. Like that's what they can accomplish with this. So, you know, it just basically makes games run better, right?
That's exactly right. The one thing I will say is technically this would if this is in a Switch Pro, that might be the case. But if this is like a next generation Switch, they are working from a much larger amount of power to begin with. So it's kind of like the same principles,
just on a greater scale.
I think we can get a much better result from it, starting from a higher resolution, instead of starting from such a low resolution and trying to target something like 4K starting from like 540p, you know, like that ridiculous. Like the NVIDIA's DLSS 2.0 has an ultra performance mode, which is 720p to 4K, and that was only just allowed when the 30 series came out because they had better AI technology in it. So to try to render from such a low resolution would be crazy. But luckily, that wouldn't be the case unless they're doing a Switch Pro and they're not really upgrading the GPU that much, which would be a shame because I think maybe then they would target something like 1440p.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it makes sense to think of it as more of a next generation system the more I think about it.
Yeah, I do too. I just don't see the point of a Switch Pro this late.
It's exactly. We're approaching the 5-year mark. The Wii U didn't even make it to 5 years. The Game Boy Advance didn't make it to 5 years. The GameCube just made it to 5 years. And that was it. Like, it's just kind of like, And by the way, the Wii U sputtered to 4.5. The GameCube sputtered to 5.
The only reason the Wii U stayed as long as it is because they needed to wait for technology to catch up to where they wanted it to be. Yeah.
So it's. I just think the timing is more suggestive of this being next generation technology, and then all of a sudden Nintendo's claim is not wrong. It's entirely true because the report is suggesting that this is for Nintendo Switch. It is not, and that's where Bloomberg is wrong. They're not wrong in saying that, hey, Nintendo's working on 4K technology. No, they are. Like that's without a doubt. Without a doubt. They are. Like that there's no doubt there. They are. Because they're always working on future technologies, research and development. It's a constant thing. The day the Switch came out, they're already working on the next generation Switch. Like that was already the case. Maybe they weren't like talking to chip providers or something, but they were at least planning it out, considering the options. Like that was for sure a thing. And it's also possible that maybe Nintendo was considering at one point of having a Switch Pro 4K. But the thing about rumors, even if the source is legitimate, because it's about something that hasn't been officially confirmed yet, it's a fluid process. It's a plan, something they're working on, and those plans can change. They haven't gone to the public with it yet for a reason, because it's not ready to be announced yet, because it may not even happen yet. So, you know, maybe they were considering a Switch Pro 4K, but then there was the semiconductor shortage and COVID and all. And maybe there's other things at hand here. But all of those things kind of led to Nintendo making a decision to not go forward with this project. There may be other projects that they were considering that have not been announced yet. What if they had a Switch VR they were working on that just never came to light, you know? And there could be other things. Like, it's not coming. I don't think it's coming at this point. When you look at the fact that we're getting Switch OLED now, it just doesn't seem like Nintendo would announce another revision a year afterwards. That just seems really unlikely to me. Because just think about the timing of things here. March 2017, Nintendo came out with the Switch, okay? And then in September 2019, 2.5 years later, they came out with Switch Lite, which is a cheaper version. They went down $100. Now, 2 years after that, 2 years and a month after that, we're getting Switch OLED, which is $50 more expensive, and they've yet to have an official across-the-board price drop for the system. I find it really hard to believe that all of a sudden, after just having a higher price version come out, that Nintendo will then, not 2 years later, just a year later, 5.5+ years into the system's life cycle, come out with a more powerful version of the Switch that potentially will have some third-party exclusives, which will alienate some fans, and also anger a lot of other people who bought the Switch OLED, which is supposed to be a better performing, more expensive model already, just a year later. Like, that doesn't seem like what they would do if you look at how they've been handling things. And if it's that deep into the system's life cycle, then how much further off is the next-gen system? Like, Could it be 2 years after that? Well, let's consider that, for example. So let's say holiday 2022, the supposed Switch Pro 4K, which I don't think is real nor you anymore, comes out.
Oh.
2 years later, that would probably be the earliest they should wait before they go next gen, because if they do it any sooner, that's really bad. Same way, doing this revision a year later will be really bad.
2 years is bad. Like 3 years is like way
Yeah, but let's say they do 2 years, holiday 2024, would that work? I mean, I guess it would work, but that's still kind of, it's less than the difference between Switch Lite and Switch OLED. I mean, let's do it and release in November, then it'll be the same. And then the Switch will have been out since 2017. That'll be 7 years. Like, they could get away with that, I guess.
I don't understand what would be the point, because
I just think that it wouldn't sell very well. Based off, pushing the Switch OLED now and then pushing the 4K Switch 2 years later. Not Switch 4K, but I just don't think Nintendo would do that. I think what makes more sense, we have Switch OLED now, and then 2 to 2.5 years later, which would put us, like late 2023 or early 2024, we get maybe that next generation system. Like I can still see like a next generation system coming out holiday 2024. I just don't see there being a 4K system revision in between that.
Yeah.
Now people will say that, oh well, the Switch, it only just hit halfway. We still have another 4.5 years. I want to point out that Nintendo started saying that they were halfway through their life cycle in 2020. So, the halfway point is a window. We've been in that halfway point window for a while already. We're not exactly halfway.
We're
also,
in 2022, bro. We're
right.
A little past halfway.
Another thing to consider here is just because a next generation system can come out, that doesn't mean the Switch immediately is done. The 3DS is still getting Nintendo published games in 2019, even though the Switch came out in 2017. So I fully expect
this will be even better, because I think the Switch 2 will probably be backwards compatible.
It'll probably at least it'll be a lot more closer in terms of technology and architecture. Right. So, even if, let's say, this next-gen Switch comes out holiday 2023, that doesn't mean that Switch is immediately phased out. Like, they could still have games coming out for another 2 years, and then all of a sudden Switch goes from 2017 to 2025. Like, that's kind of what I expect. I expect the next-gen Switch to come out 2023 or early 2024. Like, that's kind of like the window, and then Switch still gets some games, but they're already sort of like transitioning over to the next-generation system. Like, that's kind of where I'm at here, and I think these patents and things like that, that's what it's sort of showing signs to. Nintendo's considering technologies that they'll use for that system.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, and by that point, hopefully there's not really too many chip shortages, which is another thing to consider here. Like, there are chip shortages, and they just came out with Switch OLED. Why would they then create a whole other system just a year later that is more expensive when it's already hard to meet the demand for Switch OLED? Like, I don't see Nintendo doing that. It just seems really, really unlikely at this point. So I think what it is that Bloomberg has been suggesting that there will be a Switch revision, although some of their wordings have suggested maybe next generation. But basically people have been pushing this idea of Switch Pro. Switch Pro suggests mid-gen refresh. We are past the point of a mid-gen refresh. The Switch OLED is the last refresh, I think. There might be something else. There might be like a cheaper thing that comes out like right before the end or something. Like there might be the next gen Switch that comes out 2023, but then also like another Switch that comes out then. Like maybe there's like a weird Switch that comes out 2023 and then next gen Switch comes out like March 2024 or something like that. I can see something like that, but this is
maybe a Switch Lite OLED.
Or maybe a Switch Lite OLED. Yeah, that's a great point. It would be basically kind of like new 2DS. It would be an equivalent to that. Yeah. Which is what they announced at the end of the 3DS's life cycle, towards the end. Yep. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I could see that. Yeah, that works. That's what I think this is. I don't think Switch Pro is real anymore. Maybe at one point they considered it. But they're like, no, I think at this point, at this stage, it's just better to let Switch be Switch and then we will focus on next gen when the time is right.
Right. You know something I found interesting, an interesting video that is very relevant because we're talking about Nintendo working on their own sort of DLSS and why they might be looking into machine learning in general instead of just using DLSS 2.0 or 2.1 or whatever the latest one is. Digital Foundry made a great video on the estimated cost of taking DLSS 2.0, which is meant for PCs that run anywhere from 150 to 200 or even more watts, all the way down to around a 10 watt budget. And it ended up being pretty expensive to the point where he didn't think that you'd be able to get 4K DLSS at 60 FPS. Like, it wouldn't be possible because DLSS, the cost of DLSS itself would be too much, because it would take up about half of that 16 millisecond budget that you need for 60 FPS. So essentially half of it's just DLSS, and then you have the other half to run the entire rest of the game. So Nintendo is probably looking into a way to heavily optimize DLSS 2.0 in order to work on a much lower power budget so that they can actually use it for things like handheld mode, or even for when docked, because even docked you don't get like even close to the amount of extra watts there to get you extra power there. So it's not really gonna do you too much good.
Yeah. And, you know, thinking about it like that, like them like really just going in on this type of technology, but, you know, fine tuning it for what the Switch is, right? Like a mobile system that can transition from portable mode to docked mode, like just going in on that idea, like that, that makes sense. And I think it makes more sense for Nintendo to use a 4K Switch as a good selling point for a next generation system. Because if they go with that technology now for a Switch revision, I just think that there's not as much impact there, right? Like, I think that's kind of a big selling point to give people a reason to move on to next generation Switch. Like, what are they gonna do for Switch 2 for people to feel like it's worth making that jump? You know, like what kind of selling power is it gonna have compared to the original? Like, they're gonna need something. Like, Nintendo always wants some sort of like distinguishing feature for a new family of systems. Like, I mean, it's every time, really. The Wii with the motion controllers, the DS with the dual screen technology, the 3DS with the 3D technology, the Wii U with the gamepad, even though it was a bomb, N64 with being 64-bit and it being 3D gaming. Like, Nintendo tends to go for this. Are there exceptions? Kinda. Like, Nintendo GameCube, like, what was so special about that? It was basically
tiny discs, and it was cute, and you can have a handle. That was adorable.
The Nintendo GameCube was just basically an improvement upon the N64, and that was it.
It was just like the N64, but like perfected.
Yeah, but the GameCube also was one of Nintendo's least successful systems. The Game Boy Advance was basically just an improvement upon the Game Boy Color, and it didn't do poorly, but they also cut its lifespan short. So there's that. Super Nintendo.
To be fair, the N64 wasn't that popular at the time, and the GameCube was also a very stiff competition.
Sure.
Whereas the Switch is kind of just soaring in its own market, and the Switch is also super popular.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think we've talked about this before, it's not like the Wii, where it's like a phenomenon, where it's just like people get it and everybody wants it, and it's just like everybody and their grandma is getting it, and then everybody drops it because it was just a kind of flash in the pan kind of thing. I think this is real selling power in the future, so I don't know. I don't think we have to worry too much about it having some sort of gimmick. In fact, I think it trying to have some sort of gimmick might actually hurt it. I don't think it really needs to be anything too much more than a next generation power Switch. It can have some cool other features as well, but I don't think it needs anything that's like super gimmicky or revolutionary to it.
I mean, it's got to enhance things. I do feel like Nintendo should
Yeah,
just...
it will enhance things for sure.
And I do feel like Nintendo should start looking at their systems kind of like how Sony does, because what they have with Switch works. Don't break it. Don't be like, you know what? Let's try something different. Let's make... No. This is a crazy idea. What if they're like, you know what? You like the tablet? You like the tablet with the controller? Cool. What if we were to not give you a Nintendo tablet, but a Nintendo Watch?
Oh boy.
Nintendo Watch. It's a watch, and that's where you play your games.
It sucks.
And but they really like the idea of it because it's super portable. And it's so portable that it's more portable than Switch, and you can take it everywhere because it's your watch. Like, I'm obviously it's a silly idea.
Honestly, if they did that on its own, like as a separate thing, I think that would be cool. If they used the watch in cool ways, like twisting the watch actually rotated things in games. Because I saw this really cool console, and it's essentially just a crank. And you crank it, and you can crank it backwards and forwards, and all the games are based off you cranking it. I think you can move it up and down or something, but it's very, very basic. But it's the coolest thing, and I want to get one. But if Nintendo actually did something like that, and they made it really creative and fun, it could be cool. But anyways, that's not really the point.
Nintendo Watch.
Nintendo Watch, let's go.
Yeah. Ryla Rue the Sailor. I have seen Mario clips. I actually saw a trailer for it today, for the first time. It's basically like a mod of Mario Sunshine, right? It looks fun.
Oh.
Yeah.
I keep seeing that pop up, and I don't.
Yeah.
Because I don't care about Sunshines.
Yeah. I like the concept of more Sunshine content, so I'm not against it. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty darn cool. Yeah, but it just kind of going back to like this, like what Nintendo would do. Like, there's gonna be some distinguishing features for it, potentially, as we've discussed. Like, it's gonna have this AI upscaling, and they may just tout it as, hey, this system, even though it's portable, can push 4K images on your television, and it looks great in portable mode too. They roll with that. But maybe it won't just be that, right? Like, maybe it is basically just touting like, hey, this is a way better version before. Like, maybe they do have more cloud features. Maybe there is like some sort of like, I don't know. I'm hesitant to like suggest, what if they have like a SIM card in there? But that could get really expensive. I feel like we're more than 2 years away before Nintendo could like get away with that, and it would make sense. So I think the big selling point probably would be 4K and other quality of life improvements.
Yeah, I think this is going to be compared to the Steam Deck, because the Steam Deck is like the Switch, but much more powerful. But if the Switch next generation comes out and it has some form of AI upscaling similar to DLSS, did I say enough S's? I'm not sure.
That's enough.
Anyways, it will destroy that thing. Like, that thing only runs at, it typically runs 720p, and even when it's docked, it doesn't really go above that. So if the Switch comes out and it's like, hey, we offer similar graphics to the Steam Deck, but guess what? We can take those lower resolutions and upscale them all the way up to 4K, baby. And guess what? That thing only has a 1280 by 800 screen, which, by the way, is not 800p. It's like basically 720p. I think it's like a total of 80 more pixels or something ridiculous. But anyways, so it's basically a 720p screen. Well, the Switch 2, that's got a 1080p screen. Because guess what? We even have DLSS type technology in portable mode, baby. And it's going to be great.
Yeah, it'll look great,
it's
and they'll probably have some sort of OLED like display, right?
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
They might just go 1080p LCD and just be like, well, guess what? That's what you get. Could we get 1080p now?
I don't know. It just feels like it's hard for I don't see Nintendo going backwards. Maybe they do.
Sony did it. Sony did it.
When?
Not to say Nintendo will just.
When did Sony do? Because the
Vita.
I thought the
Vita
Vita was
OLED screen, and then they took it out. They were just like, nope, not doing that anymore.
But that was the same system.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Vita also was canned.
That was even the same system.
The Vita was a can. They stopped supporting the Vita very early on. Like that's a failure of a system.
It's true.
I don't think Nintendo would do that for their flagship platform.
But I'm not sure if they've ever.
Like the reason they switched to OLED displays is not just because they're like, hey, this is better. It's because it's cheaper for them to make. Like, they didn't do this revision just because they're like, hey, let's just put a better screen in there just because. Like, it made sense for them to do that.
Right.
As Basement Band is saying, OLED's not very expensive now. It's going to be the standard, I think. If not, it'll be something that's...
It might.
Even if it's not OLED, it's going to be something similar that will be just about as good.
I'm pretty sure Nintendo themselves said that the OLED screen actually cost them more. Because people were claiming that the Switch OLED actually cost them less to make, but they were like, no, that's not true. The OLED screen cost more. I think the kickstand definitely cost them a lot more. There were other things that cost them more money. So I don't know if it's exactly.
Well, I mean, it's overall. It might
not be that much more expensive.
It's only $50 more expensive.
Yeah.
So
it's relatively the same. Like, it's close, but it is more expensive. So it's not like, and it's not like that might always be the case because OLEDs in general are pretty expensive.
Doesn't the Switch OLED have 64 gigabytes of internal storage?
It does. It does, which probably costs them barely anything.
You know,
it's
funny.
I calculated it once, and it was like $4 for 32 gigs or something.
I just think it's funny that people complain about like the Switch OLED being.
I wish they had gone to 128. That would have actually been more worth $50 extra dollars.
I just think that if you think about what Switch OLED is and what you get for it versus a base Switch, I think only being $50 expensive is not really a significant ask.
No,
especially
when
you
compare
the
plastic quality on it is so much better, which is a big deal and can contribute to the price too.
I think the better argument is to make is that it's not so much the Switch OLED is more expensive, it's that the Switch itself hasn't gotten a price drop yet. But the reason it hasn't gotten a price drop yet is because it's still selling. There's no need to drop the price. The companies drop the price when they need to increase sales, but sales have been very healthy. Yeah. They don't need to increase demand. They've been struggling to meet demand, so they're fine. Unfortunately, for those who don't want to do it, what?
I think they're doing an excellent job getting supply and demand at the moment, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's been a story for most of the Switch's life cycle. It's been hard to meet demand. Not saying that you can't get if you want to get a Switch, you can get a Switch. But the point is that it's still selling. They're not like
that's what I'm saying.
They don't have like an oversupply, so they're fine.
They're doing a perfect job getting it.
Yeah.
They got that ratio down.
Yeah. But thinking about this next generation Switch, which we seem to be in agreement on, that this whatever we're hearing about right now, all this hullabaloo, is for a next generation system of the Switch.
Yeah.
The timing of it, I don't think is that far off. I think that's another thing to consider here, is that people think that because Nintendo said we're halfway through the life cycle, that means, oh, well, they said they're halfway through the life cycle. They said that this year, that must mean we still have another 4.5 years. I don't think that. I think I think, like I said earlier, they started saying that back in 2020, where it's a window, right? And even if a new system comes out in 2023, that doesn't mean the Switch is just done immediately. They will have some games coming out for another year or two. There will be a transition period similar to the 3DS and the Switch. So
people over here think it's going to come out in like 2026, but that's when like either like the Xbox Series Z
No.
is gonna come out
Yeah.
or some shit.
Like maybe they
Like,
squeeze
it's
out
way
2024,
too long.
but I don't think
It's
I
way
don't yeah.
too long, dude.
Yeah. I think I'm honestly thinking holiday 20. Well, I mean,
Rocking 2015 technology for 11 years.
I think my range is holiday 2023 to like March 2024. That's like I think that's there's like a 6-month window between October of 2023 and March of 2024. That's when I think the next generation Switch is coming out. So that would place it 2.5 years from now. And then we'll see this 4K stuff, and eventually they'll start talking about it as a next gen more consistently, and the Switch Pro will change to Switch 2, or Switch 4K. But I'm kind of curious though, Brandon, like what do you think is the situation regarding the games? Like how is this transition going to happen? Because this year we're getting 2022. Hopefully we're getting Breath of the Wild 2, right? It's slated for 2022. Right. Let's assume Nintendo sticks with that. We've talked about it last week how like Nintendo waited 2 years to give us any sort of release window, and the reason they waited that long is because they didn't want to give us a release window until they knew. You and I agree on that, right? So assuming Breath of the Wild 2 comes out holiday 2022, then what do they have for this hypothetical next-gen Switch 2 holiday 23? What is it? If the Mario teams...
Prime 4, baby.
That I think is a strong candidate. Like, we still haven't gotten... If there's no Mario Kart in 2022, then absolutely is saving it for the next-gen Switch. And I think maybe the lineup is Metroid Prime 4 and Mario Kart 9 as the 2 games that will push in next-gen Switch.
No, but they will also push it, I think, with Breath of the Wild 2. But DLC and a 4K update patch.
Yeah. So Metroid Prime 4 maybe is like a cross-gen release, right? It comes out... It's fine. Like, there'll be a lot of cross-gen games. Maybe it's even the same cartridge and it just runs differently when it's on the other system,
With me, that's how I think Xbox works. PlayStation does not. But
yeah.
Xbox works that way. Microsoft might show them a good old... Give them a little... Be like, hey, this is how you do it, my friend.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, thanks.
Yeah, I don't love the idea of Metroid Prime 4 being a cross-gen release just because I want it to succeed on Switch, but... At the same time, if Metroid Dread is successful this year, then the Metroid Prime remake, based off what we've heard, has been development for a few years, so they're putting a lot of work into this. It's going to probably feel almost like a whole new game. Like, that could be, like, the big Metroid Prime sort of thing, and then all of a sudden the Metroid franchise has 2 back-to-back bangers that sell really well.
Oh, yeah.
Prime 4, if it comes out 2023 as a cross-gen thing, I don't think it's going to hurt it too much, actually. I think, if anything, it might help it. Because initially, but at one point I was skeptical of this, but that was before I knew how successful Metroid Dread was going to become. That was before I knew about this Metroid Prime remake. Like, it was back then, it was just kind of like...
Push it.
What? Right.
Before we knew just how much they were going to push it.
Right. So the fear was, before we knew about Metroid Dread and now this Metroid Prime remake, potentially, was that we had to rely on Prime 4 to be what it would take to resurge the franchise, to bring, not just resurge it, give it life, and bring it to a whole other level. Because we thought we had to rely on Prime 4 for that, right? So the timing of Prime 4's release really mattered. But Nintendo is reviving the Metroid franchise without Prime 4. Like, Prime 4, I think, matters, like, as a foundational sort of, like, speculation, like, that the allure, the aura, the mystery of Metroid Prime 4 gives the franchise a bit of a mystique that keeps it kind of in the conversation. But with Metroid Dread now, and the push that it's giving, and the quality that it seems to have, that's going to actually, like, revive the Metroid franchise. And then they follow that up with a super awesome Metroid Prime remaster make. Something that's been developed for a couple of years. It has a lot of work done to it. That will really kind of cement the Metroid franchise, like, in terms of being, like, a relevant franchise again. And then if they come the next year with a Prime 4 that is, like, a legit Game of the Year contender kind of game, and it's a cross-gen release, it's going to do really well. it's gonna do really well, and that will, if it's not cemented by that point, like it will be with Prime 4. Yeah. And I actually really like that idea, Brandon, that maybe for 2023 what we see is Breath of the Wild 2 DLC, Mario Kart 9, and Metroid Prime 4. That's like their killer lineup to push their next gen hardware. I see that. I think that works really well.
Xenoblade Chronicles 3 DLC as well, and a 4K update for that. Anything that came on to 2022 technically could get like DLC.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I do wonder how much DLC they would do for a sequel game. But I mean, if the game is touted as its own thing and not just like 2, then they can do whatever they want. Even then, they could still do whatever they want. So,
I think they will have DLC for.
Yeah, and I feel like the same way how I feel like the sequel to Breath of the Wild 2 is going to do better than Breath of the Wild 1 from a quality perspective. I also think the DLC for Breath of the Wild 2 will be better than the DLC for Breath of the Wild 1. Like, I think the DLC for Breath of the Wild 1 was one of their first forays into like doing a significant DLC sort of expansion to their single player games. And now that they've had a few years, basically a whole generation to kind of experiment with that idea, they'll probably do something a little bit better with Breath of the Wild 2 DLC. I see that. I think that makes sense.
I got a lot of feedback from the first one too.
Yeah.
To work off of.
Man, that's gonna be. We're just in an interesting situation, right? Because like next year's already looking like a banger year, and then if 2023 is what we're suggesting, then it's just kind of like, when do we rest? We don't. There's good. The era of like just droughts is kind of gone. I mean, I think
the golden age.
The 2018 before the holidays was kind of a drought, but that was also following up 2017. So maybe
I knew from the beginning, and I think I said this. What were you doing? What were we doing podcast back then? I don't know, but I said this in some video or to some capacity on YouTube that there's no way that they can follow up 2017 and have anywhere near as good a year. Like, they're just pulling out like every single one of their big franchises almost, and had this killer lineup. There's gonna be it's got to be a quiet year in 2018, and it was. So
yeah, maybe the first half of 2023 will be kind of quiet.
But 2020 and 2021 have been relatively, not dead, but they're not like banger years or anything. They've had definitely great releases. I mean, we're getting Metroid freaking Dread, but it's nothing that's like,
they're just keeping it coming. They're keeping it coming. Like, there's some kind of game to be excited about almost every month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's not like killer title after killer title like it was in 2017 and parts of 2019 as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I got a super chat here from Midnight Naomi. Thank you very much for the super chat, Naomi. Nothing to add to the discussion, just excited. Hey, you finally caught a live stream. Get your memberships up. I know. I thought I set it up, but I forgot about it. Memberships will be set up. We'll work on it. I think the thing with memberships is that I would probably have to create like emojis or something.
Yeah. So you gotta make sure not to make anything that's copyrighted. You gotta probably make something that yourself, because you don't want to like just get static images, I think, because they can be copyrighted. Because technically you like make money off of them. So maybe somebody in the chat wants to make some custom emojis for him, for the members.
There's definitely got to be a bandana Charmander emoji.
Oh yeah.
Maybe an Onyx emoji as well. Yeah. And I don't know. What if there's just like things that we say with frequently, and we assign an emoji to that, right? Like how like I don't know. There's got to be some things that we just say a lot. Like,
I don't know.
I don't know either. Well,
what are our catchphrases, people? People in the chat will know. They actually listen to what we say. We just speak.
Interpretation of information.
Blowing out.
Interpretation of information. Like that, when I say interpretation of information, what I mean with that is that whenever like we get like some sort of rumor from someone who supposedly has sources and then it turns out to be false or kind of off, they had information and they told us that information, but they interpreted that information, right? So the way they interpreted that information wasn't exactly how it was meant to be. So stuff like that, maybe. I don't know how you make that into an emoji, but we'll work on it. We'll work on it. Yeah, we'll figure it out at some point. Maybe at some point I'll do it sooner than later. Yeah, it's something that I need to do. There's actually a few things that I've had on the back burner for the channel a little bit lately that I kind of want to start to implement. I mean, like Brandon and I have been talking about like maybe trying to edit videos together, which would then mean more videos coming out more frequently. So, you know, I think part of the thing though is that I personally have just been going through a lot lately between work and life. So it's been kind of hard just to kind of like keep things going without making like significant advances. But we're working on stuff. There are plans to kind of keep things going and advance. But kind of going back to the discussion though. Metroid Dread's coming out in just a few days. Is there something that you're sort of hoping to see or afraid of that you do see for Metroid Dread? Like, is there like just give me something, Brandon, in terms of like what you're sort of hoping to see with this game that we don't know about yet?
Now, I haven't watched any of the previews. I've seen that people played the game and given their thoughts, and I didn't watch any of that. I don't want to see it. I don't want your opinions. I want to form my own opinions when I'm playing the game. However, I will give you my opinion because you guys seem to enjoy that. So, I'm hoping that the game is very, it lives up to the name, Dread. Like, I'm hoping that there's Dread. I've heard, faintly, just rumors, the whispers in the wind, that the game is pretty scary and it lives up to that Dread name a lot. But, it's also like there's certain segments that seem to be where the Emmys are that are more part of that Dread part. Is there going to be more sense of Dread in other areas as well? How extensive are these Emmy sections? Things like that. I want to know how scary the game actually makes me. Like, how scared am I going to feel when I play this game? That's what I want to know. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that I will feel pretty scared, at least some of the time.
Yeah, like
that's what I'm hoping for. It's gonna live up to that Dread name.
There is. So you don't want me to say anything from what I've heard from previews?
You can say.
I'm not gonna. I don't think it's a spoiler, really. But there's been a common sort of theme amongst the previews, and that is that Metroid Dread fulfills its namesake. It offers that sense of dread. It is a game that feels scary. It offers a sense of terror. And that's always something we've wanted from Metroid. It's kind of what it's initially was supposed to be about, because Metroid was inspired by the movie Alien, the initial one. So them going in that direction of dread, that's very exciting. Them actually doing that. And what we see with the Emmy, when you're in those areas, that's what it offers. That constant chase. That makes you uncomfortable, but in an exhilarating, fun kind of way. So it's exciting to see.
It's the thing that scares me most in any horror thing is an enemy that you cannot kill. That's the most terrifying.
Yeah. And that's what I love about the more recent Resident Evil games. I think that's a great little element. Like it's uncomfortable, but it's also exciting at the same time. And the thing about Metroid Dread, from what we know so far at least, the Emmy are in certain sections, so you have safe. There are points where you're safe too, so you have those breathers. I think in, for example, Resident Evil 2 Remake, there are parts where you're just constantly being chased. Now you can go in a save room and you're safe in the save room, but otherwise, like in the is it a mansion? It's kind of like a mansion.
It's the police station.
The police station, like, otherwise a police station, every other room, there is a constant threat. You have time. It's not like you don't have time, but you know he's coming. You know he's coming.
Yeah, the enemies are pretty close to them. The difference with the enemies are they're fast, and they're also more of them, and you're in a smaller space. There's only one. What is it, Mr. X, or that's his name, I think.
Yeah, well,
anyway, only one of them, and there's a whole police station. With enemies,
yeah,
there's multiple different types of enemies in multiple different places, and those places are not the biggest. So there's a bit more. It's a bit different, but it is probably the most comparable to that sort of gameplay, which is really cool. Because people love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's exciting. So for me, I'm right there with you. I'm really looking forward to this game for that. That's one of the main reasons. I'm very excited about it, and it gets me thinking. You know, back to the Metroid Prime remake thing. Like, well, we know they've been working. Or we don't know, no. But according to some people, they've been working on this for a while. And what's interesting about it is that I think timing-wise, it goes back to like apparently like early 2019 or late 2018, around the time they announced the restart. And what's exciting about that is that there was also someone, Imran Khan, who said that Nintendo saw a demo from Retro Studios that made them decide to go with Prime 4. What was that demo? Well, maybe that demo was an early build of their Metroid Prime remaster.
Oh,
which would also then explain what Retro Studios has been working on all this time. You know, to some extent. Obviously, it feels like there's probably something else left out. But, like, it would somewhat explain...
If it was only Metroid Prime Trilogy... oh.
Yeah.
That would be a shame.
So, you know, and that would all of a sudden... It would further explain why Nintendo decided to go with Retro Studios when they weren't working on anything for so long, when they didn't come out with anything for so long, because they've probably been working on things, but we don't know what. Like, but
I'm sure they've been working on their own little demos and building up their engine, making sure new technologies, and probably just working on Metroid in the background, but not really on anything specific.
Yeah, but isn't it strange to think that Nintendo would give Metroid Prime 4 to Retro Studios if they haven't been able to finalize anything in like half the decade, right? Unless part of what they've been working on was this Metroid Prime thing, and they see it like, oh, that looks pretty good. Let's go with that. And so that's maybe part of what's going on here. And maybe people thought that when they heard a Metroid Prime remaster, they thought maybe that was Prime Trilogy. Because also apparently there is still a plan for 2 and 3 as well, but probably not a full-blown sort of reworking like they're doing with Prime 1 apparently. But anyway, I tangented. What I really wanted to talk about was how like they're doing these changes for Prime 1, and you see the direction taking with Dread. What if in general Nintendo is just really going in on this fear element for the franchise, and that's how they sort of distinguish it amongst other franchises. Like Metroid is about adventure and mystery and fear. Like that's what it is, right? So they go in that direction. They don't make this, oh, this is a Halo for Nintendo. No, they don't do that. This is what it is. Metroid is about exploration and mystery and fear. Like that's what it is.
And amazing graphics.
With shooting and action, of course, like most video games. But like, what if they go into Prime Remake and they kind of like, you know, they do some things to kind of accentuate some of the suspense elements that were already in Prime 1. Like we were just talking about Resident Evil 2 Remake. They went back to these Resident Evil games, remade them, but they added other elements. They were more like reimaginings, right? I'm not saying I want Metroid Prime to be reimagined entirely, but I would like to see some new elements. If they have been working on this for a few years, what does that mean? Is it just an entire graphical overhaul? Okay, then maybe it wouldn't even be called a remaster anymore. But like, what else would they do? Like, I would love to see them add some cut content.
I'm kind of thinking that they honestly might remake the whole thing. I'm wondering if next year we'll see the engine of Prime 4 in the works, with a fully remade Prime 1 and the Prime 4 engine.
Like, so instead of showing off Prime 4, they're just like, hey, here's Metroid Prime Remake. And then they say, by the way, we're using the same engine to work on Prime 4.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
That'd be epic. That's a bit out there, guys. Don't think that that's for sure gonna happen or anything, but it's an option that could happen.
It'd be really cool.
Honestly, it would explain, like, if they've been working on this for years, they probably would have enough time to do that. I mean, remakes don't take nearly as long as making a full new game because you kind of know what you're doing there already.
Yeah. Yeah, Nintendo Prime in the chat. Hola, ¿cómo estás, mi amigo? I just said hi, how are you, my friend? Yeah, dude, I love the idea of Nintendo continuing on with this direction of fear in the upcoming games, and Metroid just becomes more of the scary franchise for Nintendo. Like that's how they start to distinguish it, and I think that's a great direction for it. Now we did get some news for Metroid Dread that the file size is 4.2 gigabytes. So every time when there's a major Nintendo game that comes out and the file size comes out, people love to talk about it and make a big deal out of it. I don't think it really tells you much about the game at
2D
all.
2D game. Wasn't Breath of the Wild how big was Breath of the Wild on the Wii U? Like 6 gigs or something? Tiny?
No, I don't think it was that. I think it was bigger than that. I think it
was
like
9.
13? Like somewhere between 9 and 13.
It wasn't that big. It was very, very small for how big the game is. This is a 2D side-scrolling game. Yes, it has a lot of 3D elements.
13.
And it has 3D cutscenes. I thought it was 13 on Switch and it was like 9 on Wii U.
13.4 on Switch, apparently. Okay, so it was 13.4 gigabytes on Switch and 13 on Wii U.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Either way, small.
13 in relation to other games on other platforms, like, say, Call of Duty, and you're like, what? Breath of the Wild's tiny by comparison. Well, Nintendo has pretty good compression technology, and
it's tiny by any comparison, even Switch comparisons.
It doesn't really give you a good read on how big or long a game's going to be. But also to your point, Metroid Dread is like a 2D game. It's a 2.5D game. It has 3D environments, but those environments aren't like giant sprawling worlds with all these different random details that they have to put in there.
They only have to render what you can see, and they only have to render it at the quality to where you can actually tell the difference.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't think it means much at all. I am curious how big the game is. So that is something that I'm personally kind of like, I don't want to say antsy about, but I'm kind of like hoping that
20 hours.
I'm hoping it's a very extensive game compared to other 2D games, because other 2D games, if you know what you're doing, you can beat it in a handful of hours, right? Like, I want Metroid Dread to be a little bit longer than that. Well, you could argue that maybe it shouldn't be longer than that. Maybe, you know, being able to beat it within 8 hours or so isn't really that bad, but it's maybe more structured around replayability. Like, it basically what I just want the game to offer up a great deal of content for me to enjoy for a long time. Like, I don't want to go into this and be done in a week, you know? So there's that, but we'll see. I guess thinking about it, like, there's only like 6 Emmy or 7 because you beat one of them very early on. There's 6 other Emmy, and when you beat them, you get something. Like, and I heard that. Okay, this is soft spoiler. It's something Nintendo's soft spoiler. In one of the previews, they said that they had an hour to play the game, and they had already beaten 2 Emmy. So, by 2, I think they meant the beginning one, and then the first of the. So the first one you beat pretty quickly, right? Because it's just kind of like the opening of the game, and then the second one, they were able to beat within that hour. So it just kind of makes me wonder, like, I'm sure as the game progresses,
How
they'll
much
become more spaced
stuff
out.
Were they actually getting? Were they actually searching, getting everything? Were they rushing?
They probably were rushing to see as much as they can of the game, you know. But I am just kind of curious how.
Given that, then I would
big the game
think
will be.
then maybe playing the story might take you, like, just a not 100%ing it, but just getting like stuff along the way and just playing the main stuff. Probably like 10 hours to 15 hours, I would guess, going off of that.
Well, also
rushing,
that's with the assumption that the 6 Emmys is all you have to deal with. Like, what if something else happens afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Like, what if like you defeat the Emmy, but then all of a sudden there's a whole other Dread threat that has a similar mechanic, you know? Like, we don't know. We don't know what they're gonna do. There's supposed to be surprises in this, and they're gonna throw us for a loop. I'm just very curious to find out what it's gonna be. Like, even though like Nintendo showed off a lot, I feel like there's still a lot to kind of figure out and find. Like I think they've done a good job of like whetting my appetite. Like I definitely there's a lot more I want to. There's still so much to kind of figure out, even though there's a lot that they've given us.
I wonder if there's any environments they haven't shown us. I imagine there are. Maybe.
That is something that's always been a concern. Like, sometimes there have been some games where we see all this stuff and we're like, okay, so there's only like 2 or 3 worlds we didn't see beforehand. Like, I think in Mario Odyssey, they had pretty much shown us a glimpse of pretty much every kingdom except for like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like, okay. I mean, it's not like there's a decent amount of content in Odyssey, but
about the Ruined Kingdom.
That one was cool, but that was also a really small, short kingdom.
But it was also like the best one.
Yeah, I wish there was more of that. Like, I so badly wanted DLC for Odyssey, though, just an expansion of the Ruined Kingdom.
I think the Lost Kingdom we didn't know about.
Then there's the Cloud Kingdom.
The Cloud Kingdom. Did we know about the moon?
I don't know. I don't
think we did.
I think it was just obvious that they were going to go to the moon, but we didn't actually see gameplay of the moon until it released. I think
that they were going to go to the moon, but I also didn't. I think I stopped watching some of the later trailers, maybe.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. Not exactly.
No.
Yeah. But yeah, so we'll see what happens with the overall like length and the environments. There's just so much there. I am curious if we'll see any sort of like new technology, like new like things that they haven't shown off yet. So that is I guess something I'm concerned about, right? Because they have shown off so much. I'm concerned that that there won't be that much new there. Like, in terms of story and stuff, I feel like there's still so much to discover. But in terms of like mechanics, I am curious if there's going to be any surprise mechanics we don't know about yet. That is an actual concern of mine, and we'll find out.
I know we don't know about. I think there's a lot of bosses we don't know about. We only know about a couple.
Yeah. Let's see what you guys in the chat are saying. I think we're pretty much ending the end of this discussion. I got work in the morning, so this won't be a 4-hour discussion. But is there anything you want to bring up, Brandon, before we just kind of talk, go to the chat?
I wanted. I'm not sure if I brought this up. I meant to bring this up, but I don't think I actually did. I am waiting to see how good this game, and also just a bunch of games in general, look on the Switch OLED. I want to get the Switch OLED.
Yeah.
I want to see, and I want the Switch OLED to look really good and make me want to play in handheld mode because the screen just looks that good. I want it to be like that. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping it just looks so good. I'm like, man, I gotta play in handheld just to see how the games look.
I've seen some previews of OLED, and it looks really nice.
Yeah,
it looks really nice.
It's hard to
Those
tell in
colors
pictures
really
because you don't actually have an OLED screen. So obviously, it's gonna look better in person, where you're gonna see the perfect blacks.
Yeah.
Instead of just seeing slightly darker grays because it's tone mapped, like. Technically, like, you're not going to ever see exactly what it looks like because your phone can't actually display because it's not an OLED. But you can see that there's a difference. Like, you can see it's much brighter. You can see the colors look better. Even if you're not seeing exactly how much better it looks, you can still tell.
Yeah. Yeah. So, guys, this is the end of the discussion. If there's any sort of questions or things you want us to address, this is your chance to put it out there before we call it a night. But yeah, Brandon, I want OLED as well. Like, from what I've seen, even though to your point we can't see the full difference, it looks pretty sharp and colorful, and I kind of want
vivid
to.
mode. I'm curious if I like the vivid mode overall, or if it will look oversaturated sometimes. I'm hoping it looks good. From what I've seen, it looks pretty good. But then again, seeing a screenshot versus actually playing the game for hours and seeing all the different environments and seeing how the vivid mode looks.
I just like the idea of having that bigger screen, and also the
it's only 0.8 inches, but it makes a big difference.
It does, because it's
losing the bezel looks so much more refined.
It feels like
premium.
You know, that screen at that screen size, you know, it feels less like a compromised visual experience, right? Especially with the just the OLED color as well. But then also you have that kickstand that's super flexible in terms of the angles, and it is sturdy as well. Like, you can tilt it like almost all the way down, so you can basically play flat but just slightly raise, and you can do a lot there. And I think what's exciting about that is that because it basically makes tabletop mode legitimate. It legitimizes tabletop mode. And that's actually really exciting to me, because it's like, all right, well, on the other Switch, that screen difference, like, it kind of makes it just makes it closer to more of a cinematic experience on the go. Is kind of what I'm getting at here.
Everything about the Nintendo OLED just feels more premium. The plastics look way nicer and way sturdier.
Also want those white Joy-Cons.
Size looks more premium. That bezel, just seeing the Switch OLED and then looking at the normal Switch, it's like that bezel sticks out so much.
Yeah.
It's not even that much. It's not even a whole inch. It's almost a whole inch, but it's not even a whole inch. But it makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
I just really want it. It's only $50 more. I need to buy a new Switch anyways, so I'm getting it.
Yeah.
And I love the white. I love the white.
Nintendo Switch Emmy Edition, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Onyx Plays. I'm excited to find out if there are any hidden cutscenes. I'm hoping there's some hidden stuff. I love like unlockable post game content, like an additional cutscene or something. Like, I like to be rewarded for kind of finding more. The Basement Band. I've never actually beaten a Metroid 2D game myself. Used to watch my friend beat them in the early 90s.
I've played a good amount of Super Metroid, but I did not ever beat it because I got lost at one point, and then my save got corrupted, or actually my hard drive died. So never beat a 2D Metroid, but I will beat Dread. Beat it.
Metroid games, they don't even take that long. You should definitely go back to some of the other ones. I played Fusion recently. I mean, it took me a few nights, but yeah, it was awesome.
Well, if they put Fusion on the Switch, I'll play it
someday. Jeff Pertit, Metroid needs a unique element for me as link between worlds. I guess I'm trying to decide like what would qualify as a unique element. Like, if you're talking about link between worlds, like that mechanic that allowed you to go between worlds. I mean, with Dread, its selling point is its Dread.
Metroid Prime 2.
No, you're talking about like switching mechanics. I think if you were to play, from everything we've seen in Dread, I think when you play Dread, it's gonna feel like something different. Like, I think they've done a lot of work to make Samus feel very fluid with her movements. And she's just gonna feel like the super agile, incredibly powerful warrior. But then you also throw in the atmosphere and the Dread elements and this mystery of the story and just the combat and the boss fights and this exotic alien world. Like, I think when you bring that all together, it's gonna offer a fairly unique, fresh experience, even though there isn't like a singular thing. You're like, oh my god, I've never seen that before.
Metroid has a gimmick. It's the Emmy.
Yeah.
That's its sort of gimmick, and it's not even like an in-your-face gimmick. It just kind of is incorporated very well into the game, which is how it should be.
Right.
Because I don't think every game needs some kind of crazy, wacky gimmick. This isn't the Wii, people. Let's calm down. Sometimes you just need to make a good game.
A Link Between Worlds, doing that mechanic was neat in part because like it also was like like you were playing a 2D
I love
Zelda
that
game,
game.
like the top down, but then when you
I
went
want to
into
buy a
the
3DS just to play that
yeah,
game.
it's
although
really
I might
cool.
just emulate it. Maybe
It
I'll
just changes. Yeah, but it changes the camera angle, so you can kind of see the world in it from a different perspective. And it makes it feel more 3D, which is pretty cool. But then on that note, you think about Metroid Dread, like there's a lot of moments where the camera pulls behind you or it zooms in and just different angles. There's a lot of dynamic camera switches, so there's a lot of that kind of concept already within the gameplay, seamlessly throughout, right? So I think there's honestly a lot with Metroid Dread that it has a lot of draws, is what I'm getting at. Like, there's the one specific thing that is very obvious is the dread element, but there's more to it than that. I feel like I've already noted here. So I think you should give Dread a try.
Stunning graphics, which we haven't really talked about that enough, because the game is insane.
It's a stunner.
It's beautiful. I hear some people say it doesn't look good, and I'm like, are you blind?
It looks pretty good.
Also, it looks, and I've seen comparisons, direct comparisons of the frame rate running much better than when they showed it to us at E3, because the frame rate would drop quite a couple times, not like super often and not super heavy, but the original E3 footage had frame drops pretty frequently. But now they showed the same areas and they're running a lot better. So smooth.
Yeah,
60
I saw
FPS.
that. The frame rate has improved. Yeah. Birdman says, I want to play Astral Chain on the OLED Friday. Astral Chain is the kind of game. Yeah. I do want to see a game like that on Switch OLED for sure.
I gotta go back and just back through my backlog and just play all the games and on the OLED when I get that. Oh, it's gonna be great.
Reelaroo the Sailor asks, was Link dead in Majora's Mask, and is Link and Zelda actually brother and sister? No.
No and no.
Yeah, no and no. Link was alive in Majora's Mask, but there is this theory that he dies afterwards.
There's a theory that he's dead in general. There's several theories, dude. There's so many theories.
Right, because Majora's Mask is about there's the 5 stages of grief. I think that one I really do subscribe to, but the idea isn't that Link dies. The idea is that Navi dies. So at the end of Ocarina of Time, you see Navi sort of fly up away from Link, and the implication is that her job is done, so she no longer is partnered with Link. And I think what's interesting is that if a fairy doesn't have a partner, I think they cease to exist or something, right? So I think with her being done and Link not really being a fairy boy, Navi just flew off to die or something. And
why didn't she just stay?
The inciting incident for Majora's Mask is Link is off in the woods searching for his lost friend. Maybe Navi flew away because she didn't want Link to see her die. And if you look at Majora's Mask, it's all about grief. Like most of the quests are about grief and sort of there's the 5 stages. It's all throughout. So there's that.
I almost don't want to spoil the game, but the game is so old. But maybe people will play it on the 3DS and they'll have a new experience. But I mean, even the main villain, he's motivated by. Yeah.
It's coming to N64 Online. Yeah.
True.
It won't be available in October, but Ocarina of Time will be
eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, people might play that. But even the main character, even the main villain is motivated by grief, since everything.
Yeah. Also, but Link and Zelda have never been siblings. Never.
No.
The closest thing to that is Link's sister in the Wind Waker, and her name was, if I remember correctly, Errol. And she was kidnapped because she looked like someone who could be Zelda. But there was a lot of girls that were kidnapped in the Wind Waker for that reason. But she was not Zelda. Zelda was someone else.
Zelda was... everybody knows, but... Why do I feel like not spoiling it's not even coming to Switch as far as we know, but hopefully.
We'll see.
Everybody knows. If you played Smash, you probably know.
Yeah, a good point that Birdman brings up. After Majora's Mask, Link is possibly dead because in Twilight Princess there's that skeleton dude that teaches Link, which is potentially related to him. I think it's confirmed that it is that Link, but keep in mind that Link's an adult Even though he's a Stalfos with his armor, like he's not a child skeleton.
Right.
So the implication there is that Link
He
still
says
lived
that
a life.
He lived his life, and he was like sad and depressed because nobody recognized him as the hero of time, and he just kind of like lived alone and had nobody.
That's
it was
depressing.
sad.
Moving on.
Yeah, and that's why his spirit lingers on.
It's dark.
Yeah. I mean,
Joycey.
Twilight Princess was pretty dark as well.
Yeah. Joycey says, another theory is that Link couldn't go back to Kokiri Forest because he no longer has a fairy.
Ooh, that'd be sad.
Yeah.
Why is it? I wish Link. It would be nice if Link, of course, we wouldn't have got Majora's Mask, but it would be nice in my own headcanon if Link just went back to the forest and just like married Soraya or whatever. But I guess that doesn't really work because eventually Link just grows up and then it's just like, that's weird. That doesn't work. I don't know.
I don't like thinking of Link having a sad ending. Like, that's just...
No. It's horrible.
Yeah. No.
I love that character. I played Ocarina of Time. That's me. That is me. That means I have a depressing end because I am that character. That's the whole point of Link, is that you're supposed to link yourself to the character.
Yeah.
So.
And the other thing is that the idea is that game, that created 3 splits, right? And there's one split where you just die. The other split, you don't exist because you're sent back. And then in that split, you live a life of depression. Like, that's just, it's sad. It's sad. Like, maybe you should have stayed in the future. Zelda's like, oh, I have a great idea. Let's send you back in time to live out your childhood. No, I'm okay.
No. Screw that, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine
Armory
that.
time's
You
cool.
get sent back in time. You're like, I'm going to live out my childhood years that were taken away from me. It's going to be great. And then your fairy just decides to leave you, and then you go into the events of Majora's Mask happen, and you have to go through that. And eventually you just die, sad and depressed. Fuck.
Yeah.
That's insane.
When you think about Link, Zelda in general is very sad. Like, even in Breath of the Wild, like, most of their friends and family are dead.
Yeah, everybody just dies.
Yeah. But at least Link and Zelda have each other there, right? Skyward Sword is good. Skyward Sword, they're like, hey, let's start a kingdom together.
Everything's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything is almost really bad. It gets sad, but then it gets better.
I like the way Ocarina of Time ends because it's very open-ended until you play Majora's Mask and like, oh, well.
Yeah.
But then Majora's,
no.
Yeah. Yeah. Who else but Zane? I doubt the Deku Tree would allow Link to turn into a style in the Lost Woods. He'd still be protected without a fairy. It would be an interesting theory is that what if that hero isn't really the hero? But there's not really any evidence to that I can think of. And the Koroks are the Kokiri. True. But
yeah.
The when in time kind of changes things. But yeah, I think we've kind of reached the end of the discussion here, guys. Any final thoughts, Brandon?
I'm just really excited. I think we're gonna have to be patient and wait, but I'm really excited to see what Nintendo's doing with their next gen Switch and this machine learning technology that's very similar to DLSS. It's very curious.
Any final theories on Metroid Dread?
Final theories?
I think some people want to speculate the X-Parasite isn't actually there. What I'm speculating is that Samus was fooled, but the X-Parasite is still there. And it's related.
Put it this way. I don't think I know enough about the 2D Metroid lore to have a theory. I still am waiting. I want to see that like little intro part where they catch you up on the series and tell you what's going on, because I don't know.
Well,
but I'm excited to learn.
Yeah, and we're gonna be able to play. We're gonna be playing the game this Friday, so I think it's going to be a good time. I am excited. I'm curious to see what the week holds for us. At the very least, it holds Metroid Dread. All right, guys. Have a good one. Take care.
Bye, guys.